Sir, residents use the side gate. Delivery access is closed. The voice was crisp, clean, colder than the morning breeze in Miami, Florida. It came from a woman in a white blazer dress, her heels clicking against the slate pavement of the Coral Shores Estate's security post, each tap like a punctuation mark. She stood at the guard station, one hand resting on the control console, the other on her hip. Blonde bob, sunglasses despite the soft dawn light, a radio clipped to her waist like a badge of authority. Her name was Emily Stone, security manager of the gated Coral Shores enclave. And in her mind, the man standing at the gate didn't belong. He wasn't in a Rolls Royce. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wasn't even carrying ID. Just a tall black man, 52 sweat drying on a fitted Nike tee after a 5-mile run. Track pants clung to his calves. No watch, no lanyard, no status markers, just presence. Emily glanced him up and down, her lips curling slightly. Not quite a smirk. Not quite a frown. I said, "Delivery access is closed. Use the visitor's lane down the hill," she repeated, her tone unchanging. She didn't move. Neither did he. Before we go on, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Back to Daniel Carter. He didn't answer right away. He stepped closer, crossing the yellow line, just enough to trip the motion sensor. The gate flashed red. Access denied. Emily's brow arched. "Sir, you're not cleared to trigger that sensor. Step back." "I live here," Daniel said, his voice low but certain. A beat, then a pause, just long enough to feel disrespectful. Emily tilted her head, eyeing him through her sunglasses. She reached for her radio. "Unit 3. I've got a male attempting to force sensor activation at Gate 6. No visible ID. Non-compliant tone. Possible squatter situation." The word squatter hung heavy, like smoke in a sealed room. Daniel didn't flinch. His eyes scanned the garden edges, the marble plaque with his family crest, half covered by a low-hanging bougainvillea branch. He'd built this home, chosen every stone, every railing, every inch of that gate. But in this moment, none of it mattered. What Emily saw was a black man in sweatpants, and that was enough for her to act. Behind him, a delivery van pulled up, pastel pink with a floral logo. The driver slowed, saw the standoff, raised an eyebrow, and instinctively reached for his phone. Emily stepped forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "If you're not off this property in 30 seconds, I'm calling Miami-Dade PD. And trust me, trespassing's not a light charge in this neighborhood." Daniel raised an eyebrow, finally speaking again, his voice calm. "You always threaten residents like that, or just the ones who don't show up in Bentleys?" Emily's tone sharpened. "Don't get smart. This is a private security matter. You're escalating." "No," Daniel said, his voice steady. "You are." From the corner of the street, the florist's camera was already rolling. The gate stayed shut, but the clock on justice had started ticking. Emily Stone didn't blink. She wasn't just holding her ground, she was performing. One heel forward, blazer still pristine, her voice just loud enough for the camera to catch. "You look lost. Sir, this is private property." The gate buzzed again, still red. Daniel didn't move. He didn't raise his voice, but his eyes locked onto Emily's, like he'd flipped a switch in her world. And she didn't know it yet. "I already told you," he said. "I live here." Emily tilted her head, amusement flickering. "Right. And I moonlight as a princess." She tapped her radio again. "Unit 4. Come in. I've got a 1016. Suspicious individual claiming residency. Might be impersonating. approaching pedestrian gate without vehicle clearance. The code was made up, but the tone was real. Behind her, two more security officers appeared, one in a half-zipped vest, the other sipping coffee from a stainless mug. They slowed as they saw Daniel, brows knitting. "Who's this one?" asked. "Someone who thinks he owns the place," Emily replied, her gaze unbroken. The man in the vest stepped closer, eyeing Daniel's shirt. "You for maintenance." Before Daniel could answer, Emily cut in. "He says he's a resident. We're still verifying. You could just ask his name." The younger guard started, but Emily silenced him with a glance. Daniel exhaled, slow and deliberate. "I don't need to prove my identity to a woman who hasn't earned the right to question it." Emily stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Listen, sir, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't one of those gotcha TikToks. You're not getting viral off me." Daniel gave a half smile, not amused. He said, measured, "This isn't for TikTok, this is for legacy." She flinched, but before she could fire back, the florist stepped forward, voice tentative but clear. "Hey, I've delivered to this address before. That's Daniel Carter, right?" Emily snapped her head toward him. "Sir, step back. This doesn't concern you." But it did now. The name had been spoken aloud. Daniel Carter, a name that echoed across tech conferences, Forbes covers, real estate summits. But without the suit, without the car, it was just a name. Emily smirked. Daniel Carter. "Please, if you're so important, where's your ID? Your badge? Your driver?" Daniel looked at her for a moment, then reached into the zip pocket near his waistband. He pulled out a phone, sleek, screen cracked at the corner. He dialed one number. "Sarah," he said, "activate protocol 7, get override, verify ownership, and open entry logs for the lot." On the other end, a calm voice replied. "Confirmed, Mr. Carter. Executing now." The soft click of the gate sliced through the air like a blade. The security speaker had just blared Daniel Carter's name, confirming him as the rightful owner of the Coral Shores estate. Silence fell, heavy as an iron curtain. The florist stood frozen, phone still raised, camera capturing Emily Stone's stillness. Her fingers hovered near the control panel, as if she could press a button to rewind time. But no button could do that. Daniel Carter's name echoing from the speaker rang out like thunder in a chapel, yet Emily recovered fast, too fast. She turned slowly, eyes narrowing into defiance. "Override or not?" "You're not walking through," she snapped. The younger guard behind her, the one in the vest, shifted uncomfortably. "Emily, if that's his gate." I said, "Not yet." Emily cut him off, her voice like a whip. "The system could be hacked. We need internal verification now." Daniel didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because just then, the florist stepped forward, phone still rolling, his voice shaky but loud. "You're doubling down. The gate just said his name. What more do you want?" "A blood sample." Emily spun toward him. I said, "Step back. This is a restricted area." The florist retreated a step, but only to pan his camera wider. His voice hardened. "Whoever's watching this, take note. This man's being blocked from his own mansion." Gate confirmed him. "Security didn't. We still doing this in 2025. A black Tesla rolled up behind the florist's van, its window lowering halfway. A Latina woman in her 40s leaned out. "What's the holdup?" she asked, her tone curious. The younger guard muttered, "It's complicated." The florist turned to her. "Not really. They're blocking the guy who owns this place. Now they're scrambling." The woman in the Tesla looked past him, her gaze locking onto Daniel. Her face shifted. "Oh my God," she whispered. That's Daniel Carter from Carter Tech. Emily heard it. Everyone did. And her grip on control slipped just a fraction more. You can't just walk in because you say you live here, she barked. Daniel turned to her, his stare calm but sharp as steel. I didn't say I live here, he said. Your system did, and unless you want to override your own protocol, I suggest you step aside. The silence that followed was deafening. The younger guard scratched his head, muttering, Emily, we're supposed to follow system verification. Right. Emily's voice dropped, laced with venom. You want to let him in? Fine. When this turns out to be a mistake, it's your job on the line. The guard hesitated, then quietly stepped back. But Emily didn't budge. She took a step closer to Daniel, too close, her voice hissing. You think having your name in a computer makes you untouchable. People like you always find ways to game the system. The phrase people like you cut through the air like a shard of glass. Daniel stood still, hands relaxed at his sides, but his eyes turned colder. A storm brewing within. People like me, he repeated, voice unwavering. Built this neighborhood. A gasp escaped from the Tesla. The florist whispered into his camera. Did she just say that? Even a barista passing by, carrying a tray of iced coffee, froze mid-step, stunned. Because this wasn't just a standoff anymore. It was history. It was bias laid bare in the sunlight. Emily didn't back down. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement, as if reclaiming her authority. Her hand pressed hard on the radio. Unit 7. Respond. Escalation at Gate 6. Possible impersonator. Notify Miami-Dade PD dispatch. Immediate response requested. The air shifted. Daniel stood still, hands loose, shoulders straight. But something colder flickered in his eyes, like a storm gathering force. You just called the police, he said. Not a question. Emily lifted her chin. Yes. Because in this neighborhood, we don't tolerate threats. What threat? The florist shouted from the sidewalk. The man hasn't moved. Exactly, the woman in the Tesla echoed. He's the victim here. But Emily didn't turn. She was too deep now, too far to admit fault. You're just another trespasser with a story, she told Daniel. I don't care what some automated voice says. If you don't leave now, you're going to jail. Daniel blinked slowly. Then he reached for his phone again. No anger, just control. Sarah, he said, calm as if ordering breakfast. They've escalated. Activate Phase 2. Full system audit. Real-time compliance log. Broadcast on my open channel. On the other end, Sarah's voice was cool and immediate. Understood. Phase 2 live. All security footage streaming now. Your ownership record is front-facing. Emily Stone's escalation has been time-stamped. The moment Sarah said Emily's name, her face changed. Her spine stiffened, but her mouth parted slightly. This wasn't just a man in sweatpants claiming a mansion anymore. This was documentation. This was corporate oversight. This was her name on the line. The younger guard's eyes darted. Wait, is this for real? He told you who he was. The florist barked. Y'all didn't listen. Another voice cut in from the sidewalk, a young black woman in workout gear. Earbuds still in. I live 3 blocks down. I've seen him jogging here every morning for 3 years. Emily spun. This is not your concern. No, the woman shot back. But it's yours. And you just made it public. Phones weren't just in the florist's hands now. The woman in the Tesla raised hers. 3, maybe 4 others joined in, recording. Daniel stood still, as if the ground itself knew he belonged. The gate buzzed again, flashing green, like a reminder that the only thing broken here was Emily. But Daniel didn't walk through. He stayed, not to prove anything, but because the moment wasn't done, it needed to be seen. Emily stepped back from the console, her hand trembling, though she masked it with posture. The two guards behind her stayed silent. One checked his tablet, muttering, "His name's on the deed, Daniel Carter. Registered since 2017, owns 3 adjacent lots, this gate, this house, the one next door." Emily snapped around. "What?" The florist lowered his phone for a beat, then raised it again. "You mean to tell me you called the cops on the owner, the guy who built this block?" Silence. Then the Tesla driver spoke again. "This isn't about entry. It's about race." The phrase landed like a bullet, sticking in the air. Because everyone heard it for what it was. Not an incident. Not a misunderstanding. But a ritual Daniel had lived through before. He stepped closer to Emily. Not through the gate, just enough for her to feel his gaze. "Do you know how many times I've been asked to prove I belong," he said, "in my own company, my own boardroom, my own home?" Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. He continued, voice calm but lethal. "You thought the gate gave you power, but it only showed your fear." Phones stayed up. Comments flooded social media. The florist's live stream crossed 3,000 viewers. Emily glanced at the screen, saw her own face frozen in suspicion, caught mid-command, mid-bias. The algorithm wasn't on her side. "Unit 7! What's your ETA?" she barked into the radio, desperate for backup. No answer. Because Sarah's voice broke through again, louder, over Daniel's speakerphone. "Mr. Carter, Miami-Dade PD was contacted. We've intercepted the call. Legal team is monitoring in real time. Emily Stone's employment file flagged. 7 prior complaints. None escalated. Pattern noted." The words hit like lightning. One guard flinched. The other stepped back. Emily's voice cracked for the first time. "You can't just override my authority." Daniel tilted his head. "You never had authority," he said. "Just a uniform and a gate, neither of which you control anymore." From the sidewalk, the woman in workout gear spoke again, louder. "You don't get to erase a man just because he didn't dress like a CEO today." Murmurs of agreement rippled. The crowd wasn't big, but it was enough. Daniel looked past Emily, toward the mansion beyond the gate, 3 stories of glass and stone. Silent. The home he'd designed, the life he'd earned. Then back to her. "I'm walking through this gate," he said, voice quiet but final. "Not because I need to, but because I always could." And with that, he stepped forward, through the iron gate, without permission because he didn't need it. The air shifted, not just physically but emotionally. This wasn't about who could enter anymore. It was about who dared to stop him. The moment Daniel Carter crossed the gate's threshold, the air in Coral Shores seemed to shift, as if the estate itself exhaled. It wasn't just about access anymore, it was about reclaiming what was his. Emily Stone stood frozen, her hand still gripping the radio, now useless, like a prop in a play that had ended. Her badge flashed red, a silent betrayal clipped to her pristine blazer. Daniel stood just beyond the iron gate, sunlight catching the sweat on his jawline, his presence filling the courtyard like a verdict delivered without a gavel. From behind, the florist's voice rang out. "Yo, did that just happen?" The woman in the Tesla whispered, almost to herself. He walked through like the ground moved with him. Inside the security booth, the younger guard pulled up his tablet, voice cautious. "Emily, you need to see this." She didn't turn, "Just say it." She snapped. The guard hesitated, then read aloud. "Daniel Carter, founder and CEO of Carter Tech Systems, board member of Horizon Financial, majority shareholder of Coral Shores Management, which owns this community." The silence wasn't silence, it was impact. Emily's face paled, but she clung to a shred of composure. "I didn't know," she said, voice tight. Daniel didn't blink. "You didn't ask," he said, stepping closer. "You profiled the man who signs your checks." The words landed like glass shattering under her heels. The younger guard quietly removed his earpiece. The other backed away, shaking his head. The florist turned his phone to face himself, speaking into the lens. "All right. TikTok. This is going viral. Black CEO locked out of his own mansion by a woman who thought sweatpants meant squatter." Emily opened her mouth maybe for an apology, maybe an excuse, but Sarah's voice cut through, still on Daniel's speakerphone. "Mr. Carter, override complete. All Gate 6 security feeds archived. Compliance Department is reviewing Emily Stone's actions. Legal recommends suspension pending investigation." Emily's eyes widened. "You're seriously?" Daniel cut her off, voice calm but final. "This isn't revenge. It's accountability." He turned to the guards. "You've got two choices, stay with her or align with the truth." Neither answered. They didn't need to. As Daniel walked further into his property, neither followed Emily. They followed him. The florist whispered to his phone. "That's how you fire someone without saying the word." Emily stood alone, still technically the security manager, but her orders carried no weight. The gate obeyed someone else. The officers followed someone else. She looked at the radio in her hand, once her weapon, now just plastic. The younger guard cleared his throat. "Ma'am, step away from the panel." Emily turned slowly. "Excuse me." "You heard him," the other guard said. "Firmer now. He owns this block, and legal's already flagged this. We're not putting our names on it." Her lips parted, but the confidence was gone, unraveling like thread. The crowd outside the gate grew. More cars pulled over. A cyclist dismounted. A woman with a yoga mat called out, "That's Daniel Carter. Right. He built those condos on Biscayne, didn't he?" A man in a baseball cap nodded. "Yeah, Carter Tech. Guy's a billionaire." Emily turned back toward Daniel, who'd stopped near the fountain in his driveway, his back to the gate. He didn't need to look at her. The mansion behind him, 3 stories of glass and stone, echoed his stillness. "Mr. Carter," she started, voice straining for something human. "I didn't mean for this to escalate." He didn't turn. "You did everything but listen." He said, "You called me a threat before asking a single question?" She tried again. "It's protocol. We've had incidents, people sneaking in, falsifying access." "Did I sneak?" Daniel asked, finally turning, his voice steady. "Did I lie, or did I just not fit the picture in your head?" The silence clung to her like damp air. Sarah's voice broke through again, clinical and clear. "Mr. Carter, internal security requests authorization for disciplinary review. Would you like to initiate formal termination?" Emily's breath caught. For a split second, she thought he might let it go, walk inside, leave her with a warning. But Daniel looked at her, right at her, and spoke, slow and measured. "With immediate effect, Emily Stone's credentials are revoked. Terminate access to gate control, building entries, comms, and personnel files." Emily gasped. "Wait!" The panel beside her buzzed dully, its screen going black. Her radio crackled once, then died. Her badge flashed red again. Useless. She slapped the buttons, but they didn't respond. She looked down at the badge like it had turned on her. But it hadn't. It just remembered who was in charge. Daniel faced her fully now. "You didn't just misjudge me," he said. "You misjudged power. And you forgot people like me don't need to yell to be heard." Someone clapped soft at first. Then another joined. The applause spread. Not loud, not a chant, just a rising acknowledgement that something wrong had been righted. Emily stood powerless, Not because she'd lost the panel, but because she'd never truly held it. Her badge still flashed red, a quiet defiance pinned to her lapel. She stammered. "I've worked here 5 years. You can't just erase me like this." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Erase you?" He stepped forward. "You erased me the moment you saw sweatpants instead of ownership." Sarah's voice returned, now over the estate's PA system. "Mr. Carter, system reset authorized. All access hierarchies linked to Emily Stone's ID removed. Senior access may be reassigned. Proceed." Emily glared at the speaker, as if she could stop the signal. Daniel didn't look at her. "Proceed," he said flatly. The ecosystem shifted. Magnetic locks realigned. Entry logs flashed across the central hub, each tagged with Emily's badge number and the words, "Access revoked." The younger guard muttered. "Damn," the florist whispered. "This is bigger than security. He's resetting the whole system." Daniel tapped his phone, its screen glowing blue and silver. "Sarah, connect to Coral Shores boardroom and Horizon Legal. Tag the HOA head." Sarah replied, "Already connected, sir. They've been watching since Emily's call." Emily's face drained of color. Watching, she said, voice barely holding, "Mr. Carter, this is a misunderstanding." He didn't let her finish. "You called police on a verified homeowner without cause. You initiated a lockout without protocol. You ignored your own system, and now you want mercy after accountability arrived." Emily stepped back. "Please, let me explain." Daniel looked at his phone as Sarah spoke again. "Sir, Coral Shores Board voted unanimously. Emily Stone's management privileges are permanently revoked. Legal has initiated breach documentation for wrongful detainment and bias-based misconduct." The word misconduct echoed through the courtyard. Emily stared at the dead panel, then her silent radio, then Daniel. "I didn't know who you were," she whispered. "That was the problem," he replied. No pause. He looked toward the mansion, more to himself than anyone. Reset the system, from the top down. Phones stayed up, now filming justice, not chaos. The street had stopped moving. Cyclists paused. Dog walkers froze. Drivers lowered windows, not to honk, but to listen. A local reporter, young and nervous, pushed through. "Mr. Carter, any words for those watching? For anyone who's been treated like you were today?" Daniel faced her camera. No rehearsal, just truth. "They didn't stop me because they knew who I was. They stopped me because they didn't. That's why I built what I built." He paused, letting it sink in. "I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw punches. I stood still, and the system moved. Then, the line that cut like a blade. You don't evict power from its own home," the florist whispered. "That's the quote?" The woman in the Tesla turned to her daughter on FaceTime. "Frame that line." The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't need to. This wasn't performance. It was precedent. Daniel nodded once, then walked up the mansion's marble steps. Each footfall a punctuation mark on a life he'd built. No door slammed. No guards flanked him. He entered his home like a king, stepping into his chamber, not just the owner, but the architect of his own belonging. Inside, the house was quiet, the kind you earn. Daniel stood in the foyer, letting the cool air wrap around him. His eyes drifted to a black and white portrait above the staircase. His mother, in a Sunday dress, one hand on her hip, the other on a Bible, her gaze defiant. She'd never been allowed through the front doors of places he now owned, but her face watched over every threshold, a reminder, a witness. He whispered, almost to her. This time, I didn't shrink. The words were a vow, delivered late but on time. Outside, the crowd dispersed, changed. The florist ended his stream with a nod. A little girl pressed her hand to the gate, staring in awe. Daniel turned from the window toward a worn leather notebook on a side table. He opened it, his handwriting from years ago still sharp. Legacy is what they can't erase while you're still here. He spoke, low and steady, as if to the next soul watching. If you've ever been questioned, overlooked, told you don't belong, hear this. You don't need to raise your voice to raise the standard. He closed the notebook. Presence is power, and you don't need permission to walk in your purpose. He looked to the camera one last time. No flash, just truth. Next time someone guards a gate, remind them you own the land. As he walked toward the patio, sunlight spilling through the glass, one final phrase lingered, sacred and unyielding. They didn't underestimate a man. They misunderstood a movement. Thank you for following this story. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. If you'd like more inspiring stories about justice and resilience, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll be back tomorrow with another must-see story you won't want to miss.